What's up, guys? Welcome to the Rescue Michigan emergency makeup live stream for us not having a show this past Sunday, but we've got a lot to go over, so we will still have our regular stream this coming Sunday, but we have quite a bit to talk about tonight, including even more developments, because it never stops. Even more developments in the scandals surrounding the state party. With us tonight is Warren Carpenter, who some people may have heard of already, and he'll be talking to us about a lot of things regarding the state party. And with us, as oftentimes is the case, is Shane Trejo from Big League Politics, Brand New Party, and of course, Rescue Michigan itself. So welcome, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to be
I
here.
got to mute my Rumble feed because I'm getting my own voice from 30 seconds ago, and that's obnoxious. But anyway, before we begin, I have to make an important disclaimer, which is that I am going to probably be disappearing from the stream at some random point because I had to buy a new phone yesterday and just discovered that it just hangs up the internet every now and then. So until I get a new one, which will probably be tomorrow, it's just going to happen sometimes, folks. So just bear with us. Whenever that happens, Shane and Warren just have to jump in and start talking, and it's going to take me probably 20-some seconds to get back online. Also, welcome everybody if you're watching us on, hey, it looks like we got a comment from Facebook. That's good. I wasn't sure we were going to be live on Facebook tonight because when we created the stream, it just didn't appear on Facebook. But I guess it is here now, so great. But anyway, so I'm just warning everybody there's already going to be technical problems tonight. We're just going to have to roll with it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I think on the weekend show, we're going to talk more about the bloodbath that happened in just the past week. The last week, thank God, of the state legislature. They introduced another mountain of bills, including, by the way, 60 more bills popped in the House just yesterday. Fittingly, the final bill introduced in the Senate was a bill to legalize assisted suicide, which is, part of the, if you really know the Democrats' agenda, you understand why they would be in support of such a thing, because procreation is the enemy. The human population is a plague on the planet, and so, abortion, sterilization, suicide, these are all things that they like. And there is a bill now in the Senate sponsored by, I believe, a majority of the Senate Democrats. Let's see here. Let me put up on the screen here just so you all can see. Share screen. Here we go. Legalize assisted suicide. And it's sponsored by Mary Kavanaugh, Kevin Ertel, Veronica Kleinfeld, Sam Singh, Jeremy Moss, Erica Geis, Stephanie Chang, Dana Polhanke, Sean McCann, Jeff Irwin, Rosemary Bayer, and Paul. Is it Voino? I don't know. But that, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, majority of Democrats have introduced a bill to legalize assisted suicide.
At one point, I probably would have supported assisted suicide many years ago, but now seeing as how they're openly promoting eugenics, how it's legalized in Canada, how they're pushing
it's number one cause of death in Canada.
Yeah, it is diabolical. So yeah, no way would I ever support legalized euthanasia, particularly in this political climate where the governments of the world are literally at war with the people.
Yeah. Tons and tons and tons of bad votes. We don't have all night to go through them tonight, so we'll do more on the weekend stream, but there is a couple I wanted to highlight just real briefly. These are bills that have now passed in the House and Senate to criminalize materially deceptive political ads, meaning Jana Nessel is going to be able to go after any campaign she wants with criminal charges, claiming that their ads are deceptive. Huge First Amendment issues there. Hopefully somebody is going to file suit, federal suit, I would think, but it's not even signed into law yet, but it will be before long. Also, they have officially adjourned sine die, which means the primary is officially February 27th. So there is that. Some other fun bills they passed. The House and Senate have also passed bills allowing automatic payroll deductions to be sent to political action committees. There's a lovely one. And even to allow forced union dues to be spent on politics. Of course, they removed that prohibition. You wouldn't want the money you're extracted from you at the threat under threat of losing your job to not be spent on Democrat politicians now, would we? So yeah, this is all that they did, including creating a new state holiday, free day with no work for pay for state employees. Unanimously voted yes by all the Republicans, by the way. There is quite a lot of Republican votes we got to talk about, and we'll do more of this on the Sunday show. The thought crimes bills passed. You can see with some Republicans voting for them. And of course, more gun bans are in here too. There was a ban on having a gun within 100 yards of a drop box. So hopefully you don't live near a drop box. And bills to take away your gun rights if you're convicted of even a misdemeanor. So there are those. So we'll talk more about this on Sunday stream. But anyway, we should talk about some of the latest things in the state party. And I don't know what the best way to, Warren, why don't you introduce yourself? Because I'm not sure the best way to introduce you, because I guess the way I heard of you was that you were fingered as the source of the notorious list of the Mackinac attendees with this partisan ranking, which, and Shane, maybe you know this, because I don't recall if it was Christina herself or was it Joel Studebaker who told this group in Macomb that list didn't have those 1 to 4 rankings from anyone in the state party. That was added after the fact by some sinister person with an axe to grind with the state party. But Warren, did that list always have those numbers on it?
Yeah. So to get to the crux of the list, the list was sent to me in a Google Drive from Christina after a call, the first call that we had on that Friday that we spoke back on September 8th. And I told her that, I wanted all the documentation so I could kind of rifle through and really know what we were looking at. And the link it wasn't password protected. It never expired. So I had shared that link with one individual, and then that document got out. But prior to doing that, I saved everything on a separate hard drive to show that nothing had been altered, nothing had been changed, and Studebaker was the only person that had made any amendments to it, because you can track it, in the file. So it's Joel's document.
So let me get this straight. So you were not under any kind of non-disclosure agreement.
No.
And Christina herself sent you this link to this Google Drive.
Yeah, I got it. I still got the link.
From Christina Karama herself. Okay, so it wasn't like some subordinate screwed up, and no, Christina herself sent you a sensitive Google Drive with this document that had rankings from 1 to 4 of the perceived loyalty of the Republicans who were attending the Mackinac conference.
And Warren, fill in the context of how you got involved with Mackinac. What was the situation there? Why were you brought in? What did you find? What's your history? Kind of to set the pretext for people who might not know.
Sure. To back up before I jump into that, though, Shane, I'm going to say one thing to Adam's point. Adam, it's worse than that, because after Mackinac, right, almost a week and a half after I had started my kind of campaign to remove her, is when I shared the link. So this is after the fact. They still hadn't had it protected. They didn't close it down. It was just this open link that was sitting out there.
That's amazing.
So they never shut down the link. Yeah, wow. This is after like I had already been, kind of terminated persona non grata. You know what I mean? And then they, this is the protection they used. So, anyways, for those who don't know, I was the 9th Congressional District Chair for the Republican Party. I helped Christina in her race for chair. I raised some money for her during her Secretary of State race, was a very big supporter and believer in the things that she was saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So early on, the rubber didn't meet the road, though. So I started seeing, fractures in what that was and whether it was hiring and then, training that she didn't take and some other things. But was still a supporter because a lot of the information that I was getting was siloed. During that time, we put a training together for her for this new part of the administration. We went to prior chairs and co-chairs and got a bunch of information together. We had about 8 units that we were going to teach, from like how to set up the administration, what the job duties were, what a schedule should look like the roles of, field directors, like down to fundraising. I mean, everything. We were going to touch all these topics for her. She came into our office and our team trained her on some of that stuff. And she was like, oh, thanks. We were expecting to go to Lansing and train the rest of the team so we could start holding office hours and moving the ball along. And then it just died. She never reached back out. 2 days later, Jim Kopis is the executive director. Everyone else is out. And then, the people that were there. At that point in time, I kind of put my head down and was going to refocus back on the district. And then Phil O'Halloran, who was still in really tight communication with the administration and Mike Labadie, basically came to me and said like, hey, like Mackinac is having some issues. It's pretty bad. Christina wants to know, would you think about, coming on and helping land the event? He was like, telling him like, you're the best guy for it, blah, blah. So I had a call with my team, which was me, Lori Skibo, Phil O'Halloran, Deb Ross, and Karen Wiegand was going to be on the call. I can't remember if she was or not. And Mike Labadie from the administration side, Christina Caramo, and Joel Studebaker. Right. So Mike had to be on the call for whatever reason. And the call was, it was supposed to be about like there was, all these issues they were having with Mackinac. They had let Lois go 6 weeks before. And, they're running around telling everyone that she was incompetent and, she wasn't returning emails, so on and so forth. Come to find out, like they never had her emails set up and they were shifting them to another box that she didn't even have access to. So like Christina's up there like waving emails. I sent all these emails. She's lying. She wasn't doing her job, at state committee meetings. But come to find out, like Lois didn't have access to the emails. So it's like they were setting each other up for failure along the way, siloing information. So I get on this call and I find out that they're talking about Mackinac is going to be fine. We've got this great program. Like they're going through like the run of show program. Like this guy like. He's going to donate this program. This is all the layout of the speakers. And then we start talking about the speakers and like, they're making it sound like all we got to do is like greet people at the docks. Like, hey, who's the greeter at the docks? Right. And I'm like, well, why are you calling me? And why does it sound like everybody's hair on fire? And then I get on this call and you're just making it sound like, we just got to, tuck point our edges and we're all done. And then I started asking some different questions about like sell through capacity at the hotel. Where were we? They had a block sold and a contract for 344 rooms at the time. They had 120 sold. That wasn't meeting the obligation. I couldn't get a straight answer about who had the number of what was owed to the hotel. Everyone kept saying on the call, like, well, Dan Hartman was going to negotiate it. Dan Hartman's negotiating it. I find that to be dishonest, and we can go into the reasons why a hotel that makes their entire earnings on contracts and having time sold in its events is just somehow now going to cut a third of a price of a contract because we didn't meet our obligations sounds foolish to me, especially a hotel that's as prestigious as a national landmark that the Grand is. It's just, on its face, it's laughable. So then we went into speakers and who had been paid as speakers. And I'd found out that the speakers were supposed to be Dinesh D'Souza, Carrie Lake, Zuby, and then Jim Caviezel. Vivek Ramaswamy, they hadn't really released yet. He was on the hook to come, but they weren't releasing it yet because they were trying to charge him to come, right? To like buy a sponsorship so he would come. And when I found that out, I was like you're being crazy. He's a draw. He'll help sell more tickets. He'll gain interest. Maybe you can get a couple other presidential candidates, because what I saw was if we didn't sell rooms, right? And if we didn't raise revenue, like we weren't going to be able to land this thing. And if we did, it was going to be a huge bill at the back end, because I found out on this call as well, they only had $30,000 in the bank on September 8th, right? Out of all accounts. Yeah.
Wow.
Out of all
By the way,
accounts.
sorry about the noise. I'm trying to figure out how to make my microphone stop making. There's a very subtle noise that's driving me bonkers. Hopefully it's not distracting you guys. I don't know if you hear it or not.
No, it's all good.
Okay. All right. I'll try to just ignore it then. I warned you there's going to be technical issues tonight, but here we are. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So where was I? $30,000 in all the bank accounts. So we got into the speakers, and I found out that Carrie Lake hadn't been paid 2 weeks before the event. Dinesh D'Souza hadn't been paid at all two weeks before the event. He was owed $28,000. Carrie was owed $20,000.
And he backed out.
Yeah. Well, okay. Backed out.
He did some kind of video thing instead. He didn't come.
Yeah. I mean, backed out is probably a nice way of saying like, hey, we're not going to pay you. Like, is that okay? Like, that's why he didn't come, right? Because if he would have been paid, guess what? He would have showed up because he had a contract to be there. Nobody had been paid except for Zuby had a third of his fee paid, and his fee was $15,000. So Jim Caviezel, they had said earlier on, if you remember, that a generous donor, right, paid for Jim Caviezel. They kept saying this, and people were just so enthralled and impressed about this. But the problem with that is, come to find out, is because the whole event was ran through the federal FEC account, right? The federal account, that means it has to have a political purpose related to the Fed candidates, right? Presidential, senatorial, so on and so forth. That's how the purpose needs to be. No, I mean, that's true. It has to have a political purpose that's related to the Fed account. It's hard dollar account. That's what they ran it through. Okay. And then but you have to understand, in doing so, though, also ties you into what? Limits, right? Hard dollar limits. So what happens to your
does the party have a federal hard dollar limit?
Yeah. What's that?
Is there a federal hard dollar limit? I don't think there is at the state level. There might be at the Fed. I don't know about this, but
there is. Dinesh D'Souza went to prison for violating the Fed dollar limit, right? Because he bundled.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you can't go over 25,000.
Well, but that's for expenditures to campaigns, though. Isn't that right?
Yeah, but it's the same thing. So this is an individual giving to a Fed PAC. Fed PACs are all the same, right? If it's a state Fed, you can't dump in $110,000 to it. So,
but I remember that Dan Bonamy, the budget committee chair, who was also invited on this podcast but didn't get back with us, he had said that he wasn't sure it was a loan or a gift, and he wasn't quite sure. And how does the budget committee chair not know exactly where that money came from? Then it came out later that it was, in fact, a loan of $110,000, which seems like an exorbitant amount for someone like Jim Caviezel, who's a fine speaker. But, this isn't a guy who has really any political relevancy. Did one person buy an extra ticket because Jim Caviezel was speaking at Mackinac? I'd say probably not. So it just seems like an incredible waste of resources.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to what we were discussing on the narrative, right? So you have to remember the time and place. They were going around telling everybody it was a generous donation, right, from an anonymous donor. But once they realized that they couldn't do that because it would put that anonymous donor over the limit, right? Because you can't just pick up the tab for $110,000 meal, right, in kind. It doesn't work like that for a Fed PAC ran event. There's limits. You can't take, it's like corporate money, right? You run these things through an administrative account. So once this was pointed out, it had to be what? What's the only other thing that gets you out of that? You have to churn that in-kind donation because the check was written directly to the Catholic Speakers Organization. It didn't come into the Michigan Republican Party. So a tab was picked up like you would in kind. So they were saying it was a donation. But once they realized that can't be legal, and that puts Jim Kopis in liability because it's his wife's trust that wrote the check, then it had to become a loan. But where's the promissory note, right? And what that means is that loan has to be paid back prior to their next filing, which is when? In January. So you start to put up all these things that, why do you have to sell the building? It's not intimate foreclosure on the line of credit, right? The line of credit is servicing only $6,000 a month. If the party can't pay $6,000 a month to service the line of credit, we're in bigger problems. I mean, newsflash, we're there, right? That's why they're saying they're foreclosing on it. But it's because they got to pay some people back that they got themselves into situations that are going to put them in very, very tight spots liability-wise. It goes back to that, to safe harbor as well, right? There's some of these things that connect in a way that really put the party and some of these players at risk. Safe harbor dictates that you have to be operating under your organization's bylaws and principles in order to have safe harbor. Safe harbor has 7 or 8 things that each one of them is a minimum, which means that you cannot not do one of any of these. And one of those is operating under the organization. So if you look at Article 7 of our current bylaws, and it goes into, I have to pull it up so I can read it to you. The last sentence of this document is extremely important because it talks about what the budget committee, what its responsibilities are. And in that is here. Let me read this to you guys, okay? So it says Article 7 committees, point 2. Budget Committee. This committee shall consist of 1 regular member from each congressional district committee. This committee shall maintain budget control, review, and approve financial spending, and promote sound fiscal policy. Now, that doesn't sound like they might or they should or they could, or maybe we'll show them a contract, maybe we won't. It says that they have to approve all spending, right? It says shall maintain budget control. Those are pretty forceful words, even for a bylaw, right? I think the next thing up from that would be must, right? But shall is kind of like must to me.
They used to be legally indistinct. I think now they are for some reason. But
correct.
By the way, that was the moment I knew was coming. I got kicked off the internet for no reason, but I'm back. So, anyway.
Also, can you pull up Matt Wilkes' comment?
Sure. The answer to the particular was that if the donation was a loan, then Mackinac would have lost money, so it must have been a donation. They violated a law. An interesting point.
Correct.
By the way, we haven't really gone through the comments or anything yet, but I do see there's one on Rumble going back to I'm looking up like this because I'm looking at the comments on Rumble. That's what's going on there. Where Trumpy Beer says Democrats are really going to hate the country they're creating. I don't believe they realize what they're actually doing to their livelihood. Lots of hellos from people we've had on the show in the past. Matt, Wilk, Paula, Patty, we see you. Welcome, guys. Jonathan Chapman asks, who is Mike Labadie, an international man of mystery? That's kind of a long story. I don't know if, Warren, if you want to talk about Mike
that's
Labadie.
kind of opening up a can of worms. I know that me and Adam have had more of a history with Mike Labadie than most have. He kind of stays in the shadows because he was in on my district committee when I was the 11th district chairman, and Adam worked on some campaigns with him. You know, he was, very much, told me personally he was heavily involved in Christina's Secretary of State campaign.
Yeah, I think it was his idea of recruiter.
Yep, and pushed to, get us to 11th district to donate to her campaign, even when it was obvious that, she couldn't fundraise and she was going to get, trounced in the election. So Warren, can you talk a little bit about what your interactions with Mike Labadie when you were brought into the Karamo administration inner circle for a quick moment?
Yeah. So with Mike, the first time I met him was when Christina was doing a crisis interview for all the stuff that was coming out during the Secretary of State race about her ex-husband and that kind of stuff. I don't want to get into that because, that's her personal business, whatever. But Mike was there at my shop. She did it at my offices upstairs. And I met him for the first time. He went on to tell me fanciful stories about, servers in Frankfurt and, Seidel and, the Chinese, it sounded like a Mike Lindell, like the Mike Lindell story about the servers, that he worked for the UN and trained U.S. diplomats on how to deal with globalists, and he was in the war zone and in Grenada and all these things, and at the time when someone tells you stuff like that, if you've been around long enough, you're kind of like guys that do stuff like that and that are operators don't tell people that they're operators, right? And that was always kind of my thought on it. And I thought that Mike was a nice enough guy or whatever. And as you deal more with Mike, you realize that Mike isn't building relationships with you. Mike's feeling you out, right? So he would send me all these texts about like, hey, what do you see here? What do you think about this? And I guess I didn't pass the test because they never let me in, right? Like Mike never tried to pursue me like he did other people in the circle of trust or the trust tree or whatever you want to call it. And probably because, I knew more than most people did in the orbit. And so therefore, if I saw things that were, not to my liking. Plus, I'm a little bit of a pants on fire, hair on fire, run around, pretty intense kind of guy, and that's not really Mike's speed either. I'm probably seen as a loose cannon. Mike runs a pretty tight ship as far as keeping him out of being the guy that looks like he's the one in the forefront anymore. I think maybe in the past when you knew him, Shane, he was probably a little bit more outward to people. But now, that guy wants to make it seem like he's nowhere to be found and he's just a friend and, he didn't do anything. But, I had a conversation with you, Shane, about this. This guy goes all the way back to 2021 with MIPF and the starting of that organization with Anna Camp, and then, the development of Unity for MRP into, the Dan Hartman coming down to save Macomb with the Eric Castiglia battle. Dan Hartman was sent by Mike Labadie down to meet with Mark and Lisa. So, they were putting a lot of these pieces of the puzzle together to the vote of the 88 against Ron in August. And all these are wins that were kind of stacked up to build delegate support. Ultimately, what I think was for Christina to run for chair from the beginning. I know that sounds pretty conspiratorial, and people can say whatever, but she didn't have a chance in the second state race.
Let's get into this conspiracy in a little bit. But let's go through the budget resignation letters.
Yeah, well, let's come to that in a second. And real quick, though, I just want to say about because I've had experience with Mike as well, and he always seemed like he meant well, and he was very kind to me. Although, and he actually made the he met with me when he was talking about getting Christina to run for Secretary of State, and he was very much all about it. And but then Christina never got a hold of me in any way, shape, or form about her race. And Mike at some point just terminated contact with me for no specified reason. I don't know why. But yeah, he was. And I'd agree with Warren's assessment. He had some pretty amazing stories that people who have those kind of stories usually don't just tell them to you. But very, very, very strange character. Also, by the way, some of you might have seen that cat next to me from him there. I'm not a cat owner. I'm watching a neighbor's cat. It doesn't have a name, by the way. If anyone has any ideas for a name, let me know. And I did.
I love that you have to press this. I'm not a cat owner. I don't have any cats. No cats here.
I am a dog owner, and I put that couch in the backdrop because I met someone the other day who was like, I love when I see your dogs. I'm always looking for your dogs in the stream. So I figured if I put the couch there, maybe one would show up, but so far no luck. So, but yeah, no, seriously, I was thinking that cat really needs to have a name because its owner just never gave it a name for some reason. I don't know. Some people just don't do that kind of stuff, but it needs a name. It's a she. So if anyone has any ideas, you can drop those in the chat. But anyway, all right, Shane, go ahead. You're going to lead into our discussion talking about this budget committee stuff. There was 2 resignations, I think, just in the past week.
Yes.
One was, I think she's the Livingston County chair also.
No, she's not Livingston. I think she's out west somewhere. Or no, I know she's in Livingston area, but I don't think she's the chair of anything.
I thought she was. I could be wrong, or maybe. Hold on, let me see something.
Jessica's not on the chair. Jessica's not the chair. She was on the budget committee, state committee. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jessica gave very scathing resignation letter, and that was followed up by Dane also giving a scathing resignation letter. After it came out publicly that the MIG was going to attempt to sell the Weiser building that they don't even have ownership of.
Yeah, that's the latest big story that the news has been talking about, is that they're trying to sell a building they don't own, which is weird because we've known from the get-go. It was talked about at the beginning of last year or this year, I suppose, that the building
Saul News was on MERS. Yeah. Saul News just did a podcast on MERS sometime on March 3rd, I believe, was the podcast date, where he clearly said that the building was owned by a trust, and the only way to dissolve it is 100% vote of the entire state committee, no proxies, mandatory attendance. So every voting member that's sworn in would have to vote yes in order to dissolve the trust.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I want to go back to the building thing. To your point, Shane, in this budget committee meeting that they said, they made it seem like the sense of urgency was that the building was in foreclosure, the line of credit was in foreclosure, and that the building could be used to pay off the line of credit. And they had said that they already had buyers lined up, right, for the building. And they gave them a couple options. They said, or what we can do is we can charge every delegate $150 to get out of debt, right? But what you have to understand is the big picture, the 30,000 foot view of what this is. They still owe the 110 to Copus. If they don't pay it back, he's legal liability for the FEC violation is there. Okay. They have a convention that must be ran. The reason that we're not having the state committee meeting in December 2nd in Frankenmuth is because they don't have money to book the venue. Okay. That's why it's at a church in Rockland or Rockford. All right. They don't have money to even book the state committee meeting that they normally hold in Frankenmuth. So that's what this is all about. It's not that they want to sell the building to get out of debt because, they need operating cap. It's because they've got some hard hitting deadlines that are going to come up. They're going to provide very, very bad impacts to the party if they can't get this lift done. And probably Jim Kopas's wife or her trust, if they can't get that money paid back prior to the filing deadline.
Yeah, I've got the resignation letter from Jessica here, and he says, despite my efforts, it has become evident that the issues within leadership and the committee are deeply rooted and resistant to change. It has reached a point where it no longer safe for me to be associated with this committee, as it allows leadership to engage. Let me center this a little bit better. As it allows leadership to engage in practices that run counter to my principles and values. I was hoping to hang on and continue to be a voice for truth, honesty, and reason. However, the most recent emergency meeting, November 3rd, where the budget committee was asked to weigh in on action steps regarding the imminent default in line of credit, has left me with no other choice but to resign. Even though I abstained from selecting an option, I ultimately cannot sit idly by or support any intention of trying to sell the MRP building I believe is owned by the trust, and I won't be complicit in leadership passing blame to the budget committee for the decision to sell a building I personally believe MRP has no legal authority to sell, which Ron Reiser has confirmed to the Detroit News that they can't sell the building. Randy says her attorney advised her to resign. My B can't comment because I'm not her attorney and I don't know. But there you go. So that is her letter. And then there was another one. I don't think I have access to that, but yeah, I remember on a show we did a few weeks ago, we're talking about how because a lot of people resigned from the state party in the last few months. And my thought was, if you're concerned about the state party, you really want to stay on so you have a voice on these in these votes. But now you can see why maybe they wouldn't want to, because there might be legal exposure people want to get away from.
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand, if this thing goes sideways and people start getting subpoenas, right, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to stop the state or a prosecutor from being able to, collect your entire digital footprint, demand all of your electronic devices. Like, that's how this thing works. It gets very expensive. And even if you're not a target, they make the process the punishment.
Right.
So if you're not looking clear-eyed about where we are as a party right now, you're not paying attention, and I know that the reason that we got here is because of election integrity. And I say this honestly and wholeheartedly. The only way that you're going to affect any change in election integrity is by votes in a legislature that are approved by a governor and a secretary of state who will enact it, right? Or by a ballot initiative to make changes like Prop 2 did in the other side. It's not all these things that they're doing, and everything that it's going to take to accomplish any of those two paths is money, right? A ballot initiative alone would cost $4 million. $4 million, right?
Or a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. To get you in the door, Adam, to get the legal language correct and to get signatures and a team. I mean, you're looking at $4 million to carry the message forward. It's probably 15, right? I mean, it's crazy what it costs now to get something over the finish line, and we're sitting probably $750,000 in debt. We are $750,000 to $1 million in debt right now today. Normal administrations in the past, normal, I say, because this is far from normal, right? I think it's corrupt. I think it's deceitful. I think it's dishonest. I think it's criminal, right? And I'll say that all day long because I'll bring receipts, right? I've got receipts that show that these things are criminal, And people say, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. Listen, all right, if you're going 3 miles over, is it breaking the law? Yes. All right. Are you going to get pulled over for it necessarily? Probably not, but it's still breaking the law. Right. And there's a bunch of 5, 6, 7 mile over the limits. And there's a couple drunk drivings, and I think the drunk drivings are going to take some people down. I mean, and what I mean by that is metaphorically, as far as, what kind of charges people are going to be looking at.
But I think, going to what we started with in the very beginning, talking about what your motivation is, because it sounds like you were a supporter of Christina's and genuinely wanted hers to succeed. I was certainly a supporter of hers when she ran for Secretary of State. I was not when she ran for state chair, because I kind of saw she didn't have the qualifications to be one. But once she got the job, I want her to succeed. I don't, I'm the executive director of a county party. We want our candidates to win. I don't just report on all the stuff the Democrats are doing in Lansing week after week after week, destroying our state, putting people in prison, for political crimes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on, from killing babies to taxing us to death. I mean, and it never stops. All the corruption, everything else the Democrats are doing. I kind of want us to win. And what boggles my mind about a lot of these people that still to this day support Christina is, like, even if you didn't have this black and white wrongdoing, like ranking your donors and then just giving it to somebody to get out to the whole world because you have no security culture, and then lying about it, because that's what it was either Christina herself, and maybe one of if it was either Christina or Joel Studebaker who told this group in Macomb, no, that list didn't have the numbers. Those were added after the fact. Those weren't, and that's defamatory to you. These are serious problems, and even short of that, CEOs get fired for just doing a bad job, for not making enough money for the company. And if you want to win the next election, if you want Trump to win Michigan, by the way, you want to get this problem resolved as soon as possible, because the later this all comes to a train wreck, the worse it is for everybody. And that's not, there is, and I completely sympathize with everybody who looks at the state party and goes, well, there was a lot of problems in the past. I've always maintained the state party, as a rule, not the exception, is a welfare office for lazy consultants. But whether you're a patriot or a rhino, we're all going to lose to the Democrats if we don't have someone that knows how to raise money.
And we so I think a lot of these people are just so dug in.
Was added by an intern. Don't know if it's the same intern that's not the Meyer tweet. Yeah, that's a whole other story. Sorry, Shane, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, so people are just so dug in because they've invested so much in Christina. They had such high hopes for her. They were, quite frankly, at convention pipered by her. Some of the stuff that she said during the campaign to delegates was completely laughable. For instance, that the Secretary of State race where she lost by 20 points or close to 20 points.
14.
14 points, that was all election fraud. And maybe the delegates believe that because they're so in their echo chamber. But if you looked at the messaging, you looked at what average people thought of what Christina was, there was no messaging that got out to the broader public on Christina's behalf, and they got to define her as a loon, based on comments that she had made on different podcasts on different issues in the past. And there was no messaging to the average voter. It was all election fraud to the circle, to the echo chamber, and no other issues other than there was fraud in the 2020 election was ever addressed by the Christina campaign and the Secretary of State. Then she has the nerve to go and tell delegates that, it was fraud. I'm not stepping back because I was defrauded. And, just to totally sweep all the different failures that were made from the Secretary of State race under the rug and take no accountability for it. And then to go and go to the delegates and say, I'm going to raise, I'm going to have 500,000 small business owners, and they're going to give us money, and they're going to be so energized just because we're in charge and not the evil, despicable, demonic Ron Weiser. And then, of course, none of those donations never even materialized. And as far as I can tell, they never even tried. They never even put a token effort into getting those donations. And then they say, Ron Weiser and the old evil donor class, they're just withholding funds from us that they would have given to another regime. Well, you ran against them. You ran dragging them through the mud. And now you say you want them to come in and bail you out after you lied to the delegates during the campaign. So it's really very frustrating. It's sad that a lot of good people were deceived by this campaign. And, people always came up to me and they asked me like, what's your thoughts on Christina? And I didn't want to rub salt in the wound after the fact, but it was really, really obvious to see that this was going to be a train wreck from day one. And there are those of us who tried to stop this train wreck from happening. And, the delegates who were deceived, you need to wake up and understand that, it's only going to get worse from here. They're not going to turn it around because like Warren has said, there's many different financial improprieties and apparent crimes have been committed, and Nestle and whoever else, they're salivating, waiting for the right time to pull out the rug from underneath us to destroy us in 2024. The only way we can stop that is by getting ahead of it now and rallying around people who knew what was going to happen, who had the foresight to understand, what was going to go wrong with this administration. We need to put people into leadership positions who have that credibility, who understand how to lead organizations, and the people who are responsible for this failure cannot be allowed into power again.
All right, I gotta read a couple of chats here real quick, if that's okay.
No.
First off, Tamara says dug in or brainwashed. I think the right term is emotionally invested, and that's what's so peculiar about this whole thing is that, they're not invested financially very much in Christina. It's not like they've given her thousands and thousands of dollars, but they're emotionally invested in this narrative that Christina is out there fighting the establishment, and it's a tough thing to let go of. Randy Guppy makes an interesting point. He says, Matthew Wilk, who in their right mind would be interning for this administration? Yeah, it's twice now we've heard interns being thrown under the bus, but Warren, did you ever see any interns at the MIGOP? It seems like a bizarre thing for someone to be interning.
Listen, there's no interns, right? There's no intern program. There's no one getting credit through college. There's no one that's using this on their resume as a builder. These are, it's Lori and Phil now. And that's the thing.
Lauren Turner says, created by male volunteers there specifically to sabotage the Mackinac conference. I guess she probably is claiming that's you, Warren, but I don't.
Maybe I'm an intern.
Yeah, maybe you were there specifically to sabotage the conference, although you expressly denied that. And by the way, this is like the fundamental problem with this whole leak theory is why would the state party be giving people access to sensitive documents that are potentially there to sabotage them? Don't do any background at all. But as you gave us a long introduction, you've known Christina and supported her for a very long time.
The thing that Guppy was talking about the $50 million. She said during the chair race that she was going to raise $50 million, right? When she said that, I told people around my orbit, like, you got to tell her, stop saying that, right? Yeah. She was still saying that after she was elected chair, right? That she was going to raise $50 million, right? Right now, they're negative equity, right? They're $750,000 in debt. A normal party would have between 8 and 12 million right now, right? So that's the spread between the bid and the ask. Right there, right? That's your efficiency. Yeah. And this is the issue to Shane's point, right? I don't care about people in the past. I don't care about where you are now. You have the opportunity to put pressure on your state committee members to make this change. And the reason is because in less than a year, there's a real election that's going to be a general, and it's going to be a biggie. And it's going to be commissioners, it's going to be mayors, trustees, local DAs, sheriffs, librarians, school board members. And all of these people, whether you believe it or not, rely on a state party, right? They rely on the back end of a state party for data or for mailing or for support or for a field rep or for someone to provide some type of knowledge to a lot of these people who are just now starting to run or want to run, right? It helps divert money for tight House races in order to keep majorities. We had a 40-year majority until we didn't, right? And that's why we're getting this crap sandwich served up to us every day, as Adam reports about weekly in the House and the Senate, through our legislature. Yeah. So, that's the truth of it. You know what I mean? Here's another tidbit for you. This is how inept this woman is. And this one's coming down the pipe. This violation will get her probably at some point. Mike Labadie called me in December before she decided to run for chair and asked me to talk to Christina. She was on the phone with him and said, hey, she's got to start making these phone calls. Like she was making fundraising phone calls or something finally. And so she asked me for $1,000 in order to start her PAC. I said, yeah, no problem. I said, just send me the link to the attorney and I'll pay the attorney's fees. I'll give it, I'll give you the loan. So I paid the attorney fee for her 527. Gene Cordenbach is the one that set it up. And that's the Karamo Leadership Fund. Well, fast forward till Christina wins the chair race. She's MIGOP chair on the 18th. And for the first 2 weeks, listen to this, for the first 2 weeks, on all the emails that went out for fundraising when she was chair from the MIGOP email, right, from the official email with MIGOP disclosures, the link was to her 527. Those first 2 weeks of all donations went into her 527. She came back and admitted it, right? and said that, hey, like this, and this, but where's the check? I mean, I got the bank accounts. I never saw money that came in from, the Karamo Leadership Fund as, notated. Where did that money go? Was that cash? P.S. Pay back my $1,000, you bum.
Yeah. Bethany Wheeler says, hey, Adam, my Telegram channel with 1,200 plus people isn't run by consultants, and no one has been paid a dime for facilitating free speech among all the tribes in the party. And we do not send emails for alerts or watch. We are MIGOP Information Service and MIGOP News. Do not confuse that again. I'm not sure I did confuse those in the past, but I'll take your word for it. With all these different names and things, I mean, I definitely called out, and I'll tell you, there was an email that just came out 6 days ago. This is from MIGOP Alerts, which I guess is not Bethany Wheeler, but you see why these things get confusing. There's so many of these groups, these with which don't sign their emails, don't identify themselves hardly at all. So this one, the subject line was Pete Hoekstra for MIGOP chair ? And the email was, and I'll read this off because it's in my email, but this is, let me just read this. Word on the street is that Ambassador Pete Hoekstra and or his representatives are making calls gauging support to challenge Kristina Karamo in an upcoming state committee meeting. This effort ties in with the efforts to collect signatures to call for a vote to remove Karamo. Our understanding is that Hoekstra is being run by John Patrick Yob, a key player in Michigan politics. Does this sound like something John Yob people might have written? Because who else would say these things? He's stepping in now that Scott Greenlee no longer plans to run due to his ongoing work with Peter Meyer, a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. Hoekstra would be a formidable alternative to Karamo. And for those who don't know, like John Yob has been extremely influential in state politics for years, in particular at conventions. And this email signed for by nobody. If it's a false flag, it's not very, very well done. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think that
for the record, I find, John Yob, I have a certain professional respect for, despite the fact that he's a pretty scuzzy, unprincipled guy. And Pete Hoekstra, his legislative record was an atrocity, but if the party would do something smart, like, have some kind of agreement with the chair that says they can't get involved in primaries, or, I don't know.
That's already in the bylaws. That was actually an amendment that was passed last December before her administration took over. Right? That's in the bylaws.
Yeah. So
that's why the intern needed to be scolded for that tweet. Yeah. The intern tweet. Probably,
so I think
it was Lori Skibo.
Yeah.
Warren, let's move on. Let's go on to the crazier stuff. I know you laid out what you believe is the conspiracy behind Kristina and behind other state GOP takeovers.
For this, that whole comment about these anonymous, unsigned emails is a kind of a nice segue to some anonymous organizations whose websites I just visited this evening, including a group called, and here, let me pull this up on the screen once I find my browser tab. Here we go. Unauthorized is what it's called. And here, let me pull it up on the screen here. This is a website for, let's call it an entity. And it's unauthorized.one is their website. And this is their About Us page, which also is mysteriously lacking any names of anybody involved in the organization. This is like your typical front group, basically. It's like your cover page for a front group. And it's got these links at the bottom to something called the Center for Security Policy, the America Project, and the Coalition of Candidates, which
So it's kind of interesting how all those organizations tie in. So the America Project is Patrick Burns' org. Flynn was part of the America Project before. TAP actually helped fund Coalition of Candidates during the 2022 cycle. This all came out about a meeting that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada, on 4/21, so April 21, with Kristina went out there with Labadie, and Byrne was there, Jim Marchant, Mark Fincham, Rachel Ham, she was a Secretary of State candidate from California, Joe Hoff, maybe Joe Hoff. One of the Hoff brothers was there. Mike Lindell videoed in. Flynn was there. Byrne, a bunch of these guys, and they set up this kind of organization. Yeah, this was it, right? And if you go to the candidates thing, if you go all the way down to the bottom here, basically what it was is, to run these constitutionalist candidates and these America First type candidates, of which none of them won, by the way. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how the meeting started. So when you think about,
and I want to add real quick that some of these candidates were really good candidates, but they got
100%. Yeah. So Dorothy Moon, go back down to that one real quick. Yeah, there's Doug. I like Doug Mastrano. Yeah, go back to Dorothy Moon. So just leave it right there for 1 second as I get through this real quick, okay?
Sure.
So Coalition of Candidates goes on. They get a huge influx of cash from TAP, the America Project. They sent out about $300,000. And this guy, Matthew Mack, is now running this organization called Coalition of Candidates. He was working at the America Project. I sourced it. They let him go after they found out that he was a felon for stealing $215,000 from Northrop Grumman after he left the military as an officer. So he retired in 2006, takes a job at Northrop Grumman, pads his expense account over the next 2.5 years, totaling to the neighborhood of $215,000, goes to prison. You can find all this information. I sent the links to you guys too. It's all over there. His name's Matthew Smith Mack. You can just type it in, felony, whatever, Matthew Smith Mack, Northrop Grumman, Matthew Smith Mack. It'll come up on Justia or whatever. So this guy steals $215K, does 20 months in prison, reinvents himself as this whistleblower during Fast and Furious, and some other stuff, gets himself some notoriety and ends up at the America Project. And then obviously Coalition of Candidates. He hooks up with Mike Labadie at some point in time in this organization. And that's how this kind of starts to metastasize. With that being said, they go through the chair or the 2022 general, and a lot of these people lose. Almost all of them lost, actually. But a couple of them all ran for state chair, right? So this Dorothy Moon, the one that you've got on the page here, she runs for state chair of Idaho. There's a bunch of podcasts out there. If you type Matthew Mack or Matt Mack into Rumble, right, you'll see a bunch. A couple of them are the Flyover Conservative. And there's another one that's down there that's got the picture of him looking like a Civil War soldier in it with like an American flag background. Click on that one. He talks about all these state chairs they're working with, this unauthorized one. So Christina started unauthorized one. They formed this organization, this 501c4 pending in Nevada on 4/23, right? So they just started it this year. Yeah. She said, oh, that's something in Macomb when she had her little speech and was trying to rebut the things that I said. She said, oh, I started it back. I was part of that when I was Secretary of State or whatever. And I told them I can't be associated with that. She's still the president. I checked a couple of days ago. She's still the president. That's BS. This is the golden parachute, right? Because a C4 is dark, right? Once the money goes in, it's a corporation technically. I mean, that's what it is. It's a tax exempt corporation. So this Matthew Mack guy, this felon, right? Like Robert Owens and, like Jim Kopis and all his civil issues and, everyone around this woman that's an absolute criminal. This guy gets on a podcast and talks about how they're working with all these state party chairs. So then what I started doing is researching with somebody, all these state party chairs and what's going on in their areas. And Dorothy Moon is one of them. So she changed a bunch of primary rules for the presidential primary. She's running purity tests. She's getting involved in county affairs. She's lost several court cases for trying to throw off state committee members and pick who's on county members. So when caucus comes,
this all sounds familiar. Strangely familiar.
But if you listen to the podcast, he'll tell you 6 different states, dude. All you gotta do is go to these 6 states and type in GOP, chair in XYZ state, and all the articles will come up, and none of them are good, right? Because the media hates us. But then when you start to read through it, it's the exact same playbook that's being ran on us right here. It's the exact same playbook, right? So it's like this organization. Yes. Yeah, this organization. Real quick, this organization also, right? They say that they're there to help grassroots Democrats, right? So your chair of your Republican Party is running an organization as president of it that the executive director is going out there and telling you how they're working with Robert Kennedy Jr. They're working with Dennis Kucinich before he got fired from the Kennedy campaign. They're going to help elect grassroots Democrats. What Democrats do you know that you share any values with? We're the Republican Party. How is this woman, how is it okay for her to have this golden parachute bailout organization that's taking money in from God knows who where? You'll never be able to trace it. They don't have to do any filings until probably 2 years from now because it's a C4, right? And like they're helping elect Democrats. I'm for Trump, I'm for Trump.
Disclose donors or expenditures.
What's that?
C4s don't have to disclose donors or expenditures.
No, nothing, dude. It's dark. I told you it's dark. Right. So she could take pay. She'd be taking a paycheck from it right now. And then there's another podcast that I sent to you guys, the one on Flyover Conservative, where at the end, this Matthew Meck guy goes and talks about, remember you saw that the icons at the bottom of the screen there? One said security or the Center for Security Policy. That's actually Frank Gaffney's organization, right? Frank Gaffney. And that one is a 50C3.
This one, I was going to say, of all these organizations that they had it linked at the bottom there. Here, let me put this back up on the screen.
Let me talk about this.
Gaffney is a hardcore neocon. Gaffney's a hardcore neocon warmonger going way back.
Yeah. So this one is a C3. Okay, this is a 501c3. So what Matthew Meck talks about is, hey, listen, if you guys want to get a tax deduction, right? But you can't get a tax deduction from us. What you can do is you call us and I'll call Frank Gaffney's organization and say, hey, these people are going to donate some money to you, and then they'll send us the money. Adam,
that sounds problematic.
That's laundering.
Right.
So you got all these criminals too, right? So you got Robert Owens, right? This guy, let's back up real quick to Mackinac. You got Robert Owens, this guy that the party hires. Christina says she hires this guy to be a fundraiser and liaise for speakers up in for Mackinac, right? And 10 days before Mackinac, on 9/11/2023, he's sentenced in Ohio for 6 felonies of stealing client funds. He also went through a divorce during this time with his wife, where it came out in their divorce proceedings that he was spending money on 12 prostitutes. 12 prostitutes through the divorce in this last calendar year, okay? This guy, 10 days later, is up on Mackinac taking pictures with Carrie Lake, right? How do you think the Lakes, Carrie Lake's team would think about being exposed to someone like that and having her picture with this individual who 10 days before is probably on an ankle monitor to be able to leave Ohio to come to Michigan to be involved in this? Plus, here's another thing. If you're on probation, you can't be in bars, bro. I hate to tell you, this is a guy that, doesn't drink anymore, but got a bunch of DUIs. He's been sober for 15 years, right? Part of probation means you can't be in establishments that sell alcohol. That guy was up at Mackinac all weekend. Who's calling his probation officer? There's another criminal. Like, here's the thing. Like, if you're running an inept organization because you lack institutional knowledge, because people are just not, they're not in tune or they don't have the experience. Okay, whatever, right? That's one thing. But then and to supplant even people that are unknowledgeable with absolute criminals of all around you. Jim Kopis. To go back to the building real quick, this individual, he was sued civilly because he was an M&A guy in Chicago. A company came to him and said, hey, we've got this property. We want you to sell this property. He said he was going to take the property to market. He came back to the seller and said, oh, man, market's tough. I could only get these offers. This is the best offer. And then basically a business that was owned by his wife acquired the asset, right, for $150,000. When he had offers that were $400,000 higher than the offer that he sold it to his own wife's business for. So then basically what he's doing is he's taking people's assets, not taking them to the street, telling him he can only get this much, and then saying that, oh, my wife doesn't say it's his wife's business, but come to find out the discovery, they found out it was kind of like his new wife who gave a $110,000 loan from a trust to Jim Caviezel. Right? This guy's been sued for this stuff. So who do you think the buyer for the building they have set up is? You know what I mean? These people are criminals. Like, just pay attention to what's going on. This is all open source, public information. All of it's public information. The court cases, all the things that people have done in their past, and what's going on now for the most part, because I've made it so. This is nuts.
So Warren, going back to the unauthorized group, I know that there's been an impetus with the precinct strategy project for ordinary Trump supporters to get involved and take control of the Republican Party from the bottom up, similar to what me and Adam have been doing since the Tea Party days. And, we've ran into kind of the same brick walls that people are running in now. You come in, you slash and burn. It causes more problems than it fixes. And my only thought is that, are these people, or some of these people, and maybe ensnared into a trap? But I think a lot of these people are trying to get involved, take over their parties, inject corrupt people, and create a new infrastructure so that the Republican Party can be an America First party. And I don't want to cast too broad of a net on all these people to say that they're all in on this conspiracy. There are probably people within these organizations who are subverting them or infiltrating them. Like with the America Project, it seems like there is always so much turmoil going on in this organization that was founded by good people, General Flynn, who came in with the most noble of intentions, and it's just besieged with mayhem and people at each other's throat, weird things happening. And I think it's an infiltration problem more than a deliberate conspiracy problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that was my thing, is that when, because all this starts back. So if you go back to that timeline of 321 when MIPF starts, right, and then 421 where Labadie gets into this organization where he goes to this meeting. At that point in time, Labadie's made contacts with these guys, right? Now he's running Christina as Secretary of State right after this, right? Now they're starting to work for Unity for MRP. He can start pulling these people to gain credibility. Right. So, I met so-and-so. He just met him last week. He can get him on the phone, or he might be able to pull somebody for an event. And that's how these things happen. These people, they grift off other people's credibility, but they insert bad intentions along the way. Listen, Labadie's never been a signer on anything, by the way. Okay. For a guy that's like always there, and like, we couldn't even have the Friday phone call that I had with Christina about Mackinac. Saturday was followed up with the plan that I gave them to pull the event off, because I still had a call with them the next day. And we were going to have the call on Zoom, but then Christina got on the Zoom call and said, we can't do it on Zoom because Mike can't be on Zoom. Like he's on Zoom's Most Wanted or something, right? We had to do it on Zoho, right? For a guy that's like not a player, like, why do I have to change the whole call for this asshole to be, sorry, for this guy to be on the call when he's got no business being on the call anyways? He didn't say a peep. He was just lurking, It doesn't make any sense. If he's a nobody, then he's a nobody, but this guy's everywhere. Right.
And plus, we didn't like, the whole, that was the whole people were all angry about Ron Weiser with, the payoff to Stan Grott behind closed doors in smoke-filled back rooms, making decisions that impacted the statewide politics. And now you have new shadowy political figures who are behind the scenes calling the shots. So it seems like it's just a continuation of the same old problem. And whether it's, they say it's because we need to protect secrecy and everyone's coming to get us, and this paranoia that's used to excuse it, it's still not acceptable. We wanted more transparency and accountability, not shadow masters behind the scenes pulling the strings.
And if I could just interject here, Shane, talking about Ron Weiser and the Stan Grott business, that wasn't illegal. Evidence being there was a contract, there was a signed contract. You can't do contracts are not enforceable for illegal activities. And they at least believed what they were doing was completely on the up and up. They ended up having just to settle out of court, just to say it'll be cheaper to pay the AG to go away than it will be to take this to court. But what pissed me off is, I said earlier, I made the comment about how State Party is institutionally, obviously funded by a lot of big money, very poor usage of that money, no question. But what did Ron Weiser do in his last 2-year term in office? He spent millions of dollars supporting the Unlock Michigan campaign to end the lockdowns. That was humongous. That was something that the party had never done in the past. He brought in someone from the RNC who recruited thousands of people to be poll workers, something the party had never done before. And the gratitude the grassroots had for Ron Weiser, who actually started doing things differently, who also, remember, had Michonne Maddock as co-chair. That was his leadership team. He brought in the most hardcore Trump supporters in the state, the woman who ran the Trump campaign in Michigan practically in 2016 and 2020, not to diminish from Marion Sheridan and the others, but one of the leading grassroots people, the most influential grassroots person in the state is who Ron Weiser picked to be his co-chair. So, and all of this they repaid by booing him at convention. Had they not had they not been able to get the convention rules through, they would have evicted him from being the convention chair. And he looked at this group and says, you know what, screw these people. They're not worth it. That's when he walks away from the party. That's when the party starts to lose the 2022 elections, is when they're like, you know what, screw these ingrates. And
Ron Weiser also gave a lot of money.
He didn't owe the party money. He put millions of his own dollars into the party, which is not something Laura Cox did. So, I have to say, I think Ron Weiser was, frankly, one of the best chairs we've ever had in the state party. And that might be heresy to some people, but I'm saying it.
But Weiser also gave a lot of money to President Trump. There's a lot of people in the donor class of the establishment, affiliated donor class, of which obviously Ron Weiser was, that they just, tuck and ran. They quit. They threw in the towel. They left. They wouldn't give a dime to Trump. Ron Weiser's, one of the guys who stayed in the fold and raised millions of dollars for Trump in 2016 and 2020. Now, will he stay and raise money in 2024 after he was publicly crapped on by delegates over, the vast majority of which was over completely fabricated nonsense, paying Trump for endorsements? We heard a million different lies from self-motivated actors in the grassroots who had an axe to grind and wanted their own ego trip and their own power trip. They put that ahead of what was best for the cause. So will Ron Weiser give to President Trump in 2024? I hope so, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's just on an island or on a beach and just says, screw that, I don't need that headache. So it's another unfortunate negative aspect of the grassroots imploding in Michigan. And, a lot of people still don't want to accept accountability for what's happened.
Yeah, Ron Weiser didn't get Gary Johnson and James Craig thrown off the ballot. That was big league consultant John Yopp. But that's another story.
Yeah, that guy just got sentenced for that in Warren, actually, I think. Hey, Adam, I just sent you something. Can you pull up that one? This has to do with the conversation that we're on right now about Ron and Christina. The
I'll look for it right now.
Yep, I just emailed it to you. So this picture that he's going to pull up is, I'll just preface it real quick. It was the very first state committee meeting that we all got together on state committee up in Clare, Michigan, where she was going through, and this is when she was telling everyone that Ron left her with $2 million in debt, and that he left her broke and didn't give her any money, and blah 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 blah. And this was one of the slides that was up on the screen during her PowerPoint, right? And let's just go through this because, it's crazy. You could almost switch these two on the way she made it seem. So she said that the Ron Weiser administration left state committee in the dark, right? We just read the resignation letters from the budget committee tonight on this podcast. Right. And you've seen and heard everything that we've talked about. They haven't approved anything. They haven't approved Joe Moss's contract. They haven't approved the Good Neighbor program contract. They haven't approved any expenditures, right? None. They didn't approve the Jim Caviezel. It's a donation. It's a loan. They didn't know anything. They didn't approve any of the speaker fee, nothing. Right. And it clearly states in the bylaws they have to. And so in the Karamo administration, state committee, transparency and partnership. That's what she promised, right? So that's a lie. Okay. She said that Ron was doing this and that she wasn't going to, and she was going to be this. It's the exact opposite. It's like she wrote what Ron was for herself. So the next one. In Ron Weiser's administration, decisions are made by a few. Okay. These are her words. She was up in front of the entire state committee saying this to people. Right. And in the Karamo administration, state committee will be involved in decisions. Again, let's harken back. It wasn't just 2 budget committee resignations, you guys. Those are the most recent. You got to remember Matt Johnson resigned as well as another treasurer resigned. They're on their another committee chairman resigned. They're on their 3rd budget committee chairman, and then they had 2 more resignations. That's 4 total out of 13 resigned. All right. And be very clear. Only a few are making the decisions. That's why nobody knows anything except for the information that I get out. And that's why people are saying, oh, he's a leaker. He's that. Why haven't I been sued? Right. If I'm lying about anything, where's the lawsuit? Bring it. Where's the lawsuit? Why haven't I got a cease and desist? Where's the lawsuit? Where's big bad Dan Hartman right now? Bring it. Because they know that there's nothing they can do. I'd get discovery. I'd crush these people. All right, let's go to the next one. In Ron Weiser's administration, there was no transition. They had a burn down the house strategy. Not true, right? After Christina won, Ron paid off $2 million of the line of credit, bringing down the balance to $400,000 roughly. and left almost $300,000 in the bank accounts on day one. 300 grand that she burned through, sending 90,000 of it over to Joe Moss. Now let's look what she's going to do, right? A transition process will be made for the next chairman. She can't even pay the bills. She's $1 million in debt. We're not going to have a presidential conference. We can't even have our meetings where we normally have them because she can't even rent a room, right? And then in Ron Weiser's administration, gold ruled, right? Gold ruled. And then in her administration, God ruled. Well, I just pointed out 3 lies in a row. How faithful are you? You're a liar and a deadbeat.
And one another thing is, not only is there no transition, not only has the house been burnt down, but now it's like, who even wants the position of chairman with the completely dilapidated state the MIGOP is in now? There were 10, 15 people who wanted it less than a year ago. Now no one wants to touch that thing with a 10-foot pole. And we can make excuses. We can say it's evil Ron Weiser is still behind the scenes sabotaging or blah blah blah. It's always going to be a million excuses, but ultimately the buck stops with the administration itself, and that's why they're losing budget committee members left and right. And it's not going to turn around. It's only going to get worse from here, and the state committee needs to take action immediately.
Yeah, I mean, this is completely
everyone needs to be calling their state committee members. Everyone needs to be calling their state committee members.
Yeah, let me show you. This is what Christina posted the other day. I think this looks like it's on Facebook. Let me move this a little bit up so you guys can see it. It's amazing it's amazing anybody would think to make a public statement like this. As chair of MIGOP, we disrupted decades of an influence peddling scheme masquerading as a political party. It should surprise no one that we are being fiercely attacked for taking our party back, which was necessary to save our republic from globalists in the political class that operate like a criminal cartel. There's some confession through projection going on here. The deception is so pervasive that a White House press correspondent who reports on national and international news is peddling the deceptive Alinsky-style agenda of the old guard establishment in Michigan. I don't even know who she's referring to. Michigan isn't the only state where a constitutionalist has become chair. Oh, look, she's referencing her other handiwork. It's obvious we took a key pillar from the controlled opposition who are destroying our nation.
But okay, here's the thing. Okay, now what? What are you doing? What? How are you going to affect any change? You have nothing. What is this? Yeah. This is what we're living through, this nightmare. Forget the Democrats for just a day. Look at this. This is your chair. How does that help any candidate? What is that doing to move values forward? Who are you? She's yelling at the wind. Farts have more impact.
Yeah. And I wanted to briefly address.
Rama knows election integrity is important. How can she address election integrity when her administration has no election integrity? How is she going to do anything on election integrity? How?
Yeah, they don't have a legal team to file anything. Like, they don't have any infrastructure. They don't have data. They don't have anything. It's a favor for favor. Listen, like I said, once you guys understand that this whole thing, this whole thing is by design, it makes more sense, right? Yeah. I mean, like that's where I'm at, because there's no way because people have come to her, right? Shane, Adam, there's great people who aren't the establishment class consultants, right? Who have a ton of institutional knowledge that could have helped her get this thing off the floor and really had a machine running. Like, at every opportunity, she shuts these people down. And if you go through her past, whether it's Roseanne Ponkowski, or it's Christy Claymore, or it's Jonathan Chapman, or it's me, or it's everyone in her orbit that knows anything or that has worked with her, there's a shelf life. It's like your lettuce, right? Because after you get enough of the whiff, you understand what the grift is, and then you're discarded. That your character assassinated prior to you even knowing that you're fired or let loose. And I saw it coming, and I said, I'm not going to stand for it.
And I want to address what Joellen said. What's the path forward? You look at what happened with the House Speaker fight. Matt Gaetz and a handful of intrepid Republicans actually went with the Democrats to pull the plug on Speaker Kevin McCarthy after he repeatedly lied and disregard his promises, similar to the Karamo administration, what they've done in Michigan. And they pulled the plug on him. There's a lot of people who said, who are you going to replace him with? What's the plan forward? And ultimately, it worked out. They got someone who's more conservative. The time, and presumably more competent. It's going to be a lot of pressures on Mike Johnson as House Speaker. So we'll see how it turns out there. But ultimately, they did the right thing because they set the example. They set the message that corruption and incompetence and broken promises will not be tolerated. And I think we have to have that same sort of ethos in Michigan. We can't allow the bad leadership to sustain itself just because of what will happen if we get rid of them. At this point, all you just need someone who isn't going to be brazenly incompetent and corrupt to replace the current administration. It would be a plus.
Well, speaking of that, however, I have to sadly report that Mike Johnson has failed his first test. He passed a continuing resolution to keep the Pelosi budgets going. And,
with a Democrat majority.
More Democrats supported it than Republicans did.
Yep.
Some Republicans voted no on that. Although, by the way, of the Michigan Republican delegation, every single one of them voted for the Pelosi budget extension, which is amazing because somehow something like 89 or 95 or some number like that of Republicans voted no. That's a fractured caucus that we have in Washington. And apparently all of the Michigan delegation is on the side of the status quo. Sad to say, but I don't know how we're going to address that problem. We have the whole party problem to address too. So
that's the other thing. Like you can't even hold your legislators. Like your focus is distracted, right? Everything we do, we have to look inward, right? We're like nothing changes until this changes. There is no tomorrow until you fix today. I'm telling you right now, like that's a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt says the most damaging line we hear is we all need to get behind Christina. That clearly has not worked and will not work. Yeah, I mean, she would just be using you to be doing that. So amazing. Yeah, Mindy says her silence is deafening. Yeah, I mean, the silence of the entire data leak that was, this big story. For a week and a half, she pretended like it never happened. Like she didn't have an obligation to tell people that their information was compromised. I mean, that's completely outrageous. And Warren, you have identified she was the one who provided that information. Nobody else in the state party. That was a mess of her own making.
Well, and this is the thing that you guys have to understand, right? She hasn't for 8 months accounted for anything, right? This stuff has been going on, and I kind of poo-pooed it because I didn't believe it, because everything I heard was from the people that are around her telling me the things that I heard, right? You're in a silo of information. But the second that I came out, and for 20 minutes, I spoke in Macomb, right? On October 10th or October 12th, I did a 20-minute speech at a Macomb County executive meeting. Within 1 week, her and Joel Studebaker and Ken Byer and all these fools drove from across the state to come rebut me, right? They hadn't made an answer. They didn't account to your state committee, but they had to come answer for what I said because it was so damning. That tells you these people are scared. I was wondering
why it was Macomb County where there was that event.
Because I was there 1 week prior, and I told them, and I peeled back just a couple layers. I mean, we've been on this podcast for an hour. I went into 15% of what I got. I asked Shane. Me and Shane met. It took me 2 hours to give you a surface knowledge of this. Is that not true?
Yeah, you were going down the rabbit hole with me. That was interesting. There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw some of these documents that she left available, and let's just say there's quite a few of them. There's more than I thought there were. A lot more than I thought there were.
Yeah, go through it, Adam. As you have questions, man,
Another thing I wanted to mention was that we also invited MIGOP Chief of Staff Joel Studebaker on the podcast today. We wanted to have a balanced approach as much as possible. So we invited Studebaker and Bonamy. Neither got back with me when I reached out to them. So we want to have as balanced of a discussion as possible. We don't want to pile on. I've heard reports from people who have actually had positive impacts and results with the Good Neighbor program, and the MIGOP claims that they were on amicus brief to help keep Trump.
Yeah, that was another little story. There was this decision where the judge said we can't throw Trump off the ballot, which was obvious for a lot of reasons. I think the two that he went with were the issue was not ripe, which I think is a weak legal theory, but the judges like it because it's easy to throw out cases. And they also said it was a political question.
Yeah.
So those are the two arguments made. But Katrina says like that was their doing.
Yeah, they glommed onto it. They had no part of that. They literally attached their name to it as the state party. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all the relation they had.
Anybody can do. It's an easy way to say, look what we did. We filed an amicus brief. Of course, we don't even pay attention to those hardly at all.
Yeah, but just to give them the benefit, to play devil's advocate, to give them the benefit of the doubt. I do believe that there are well-intentioned people at MIGOP. But there's been so many blunders. There's been so much incompetence. The incompetence has been doubled down upon. It's been made so much worse. There's been so much obfuscation of the basic, things that should be known, not just to the public, but to the budget committee, to the state committee. These broken promises, the lies that were made on the campaign trail to the delegates about fundraising, the slash and burn tactics, the dishonesty. The duplicitousness, it's all been there from the get-go, and it's been worse than what those of us who were pessimistic about the situation could have even imagined. So Dan Lawless says, talk to your state committee members, present these facts to them. From what I can tell, there are a lot of people still on the fence, and they need to understand these facts.
Now they've got this video, which I would say we should probably call it a stream because we have been going for a long time before my phone loses the internet for a third time. And the longer we make the video, the fewer people will watch it probably. But thank you, Warren, for joining us tonight. That has been a wealth of information, and I think there's even more to look forward to. I don't know, looking forward to it's the right term for it. There's more coming. Let's put it that way.
And just so you guys know, if those guys ever want to come on, listen, it's what I told Shane. I would have rather they came on because then you could have saw it with your own eyes, right? Then we could have had a real conversation. But the reason is I'm everywhere, right? I'll go anywhere, anytime, and talk about this with facts and documents to anybody. These people are nowhere to be found. Remember that.
Yep. Daniel Lawless says many of them are telling me they're supporting Christine because the delegates did. That's a flimsy excuse, by the way. That's the way of passing the buck.
The unfortunate part about that is that they're going to be responsible for the losses in 2024. And I promise you, anybody that doesn't do the right thing in this, I will run personal ads in your hometown newspapers telling everyone in your community that you let this train wreck happen and affected the 2024 general election for your inactivity if you're on state committee and you let this go forward.
And it's easy to just be dug in and say, oh, we're going to stand our ground and we're going to keep supporting our dear leader. And then when we lose, we'll just blame election fraud. We'll say it was election fraud and the deck was stacked against us. That's defeatist. That's what people say when they've already been defeated, when they've rolled over and they're just making excuses for having thrown up the white flag of surrender. We have to be working to overcome these obstacles that have been put in our place so that something like 2020 doesn't ever happen again, doesn't happen in 2024. We can't accept defeat and just become dug in our echo chamber and get paranoid and hang out with the same group of people and say the same thing over and over to each other. We have to reach out to the community. We have to change hearts and minds. We have to make it so that we win by such an overwhelming margin that they can't cheat us in 2024. That's what we must do. But to say, oh, we don't all that money, we don't need money. We can just preach to the choir that the fraud happened in 2020 and do nothing to change our approach for 2024. That's a loser's attitude, and people who have that attitude should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, I'm going to close with Daniel Lawless's comment here about he says some state committee members, just like the politicians, they don't want to risk their seats by standing up. You need to pressure them the same as you pressure your lawmakers. Yeah, we ran a resolution for Christine's resignation at our county party last week, and we didn't have the votes to do it because, frankly, these people are they're like Republicans. They're cowards in the face of evil, and they won't call it out. And this is why we're losing our country. It's because
be courageous, be brave.
Yep, you have to, and we're going to keep at it because otherwise we're going to lose the next election. And they're going to want to point fingers at everybody who is calling or has been speaking the truth. But sooner or later, this is all going to catch up to people. So that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. We will be back Sunday night. We will talk about all of the crazy crap that happened in Lansing and hopefully give you guys some more ammunition to beat the crap out of these Democrats politically in their districts over the next 2 months. Because guess what, folks? They're knocking on doors for the next 2 months. They're not going to be back in session until January 10th. They're going to be knocking on doors, lying to voters. And if you're not out knocking on doors, even in the cold, they're going to get the advantage. So we will be giving you a lot of helpful materials. Someone asked me, this is, I think, a great idea for a summary of the worst things they did all year. So we'll make some kind of flyer for that, some kind of webpage for that too. Maybe some kind of particular issue-specific things, all the election fraud bills they ran, things of that nature to inform voters of how jeopardized the integrity of the upcoming election will be, things of that nature. So until next time, Sunday, thanks for all you guys do for Liberty. Warren, thank you for joining us. Shane, thanks as always. And until next time, peace out.